And this afternoon we'll be enjoying a bus tour of the city with a local guide.
You're in West London here, West London. And the original London is, we're going there, the original London is called the City. And it's miles from here. And then 2 miles from there was the Royal Palace of the Kings, where Parliament is now, 2 miles west. And then in the 16, 17, 1800s, one area after another was built up for what were then called the carriage classes. Wealthy people who kept their carriage.
Yeah.
And so originally they would share a garden in the middle, like here. Now this actually is still the private garden of the people who live around. Now, like here, you have new houses on the left, replacing the old ones, or the old ones become flats, and then there is still the mews behind, other mews on the left there. This is a school on the left. See? This area south of the park and then another area north of the park were the last areas in the last 30 years of the 19th century to be deliberately built up for these very wealthy people, because by this time public transport had come and everybody was moving. The centre of town gradually became depopulated. It was already starting then, although now it's gone terrific. So here we are in South Kensington. Kensington was once a little village. It's now a West London suburb. Now, on the right is the most interesting museum for visitors. That is the Victoria and Albert, the Museum of Art and Design, everything you can think of under the headings of art and design. Natural history here on the left, and then the next museum is geology, and the one after that is science, and of course you get lots of school visits. The V&A has furniture through the ages. It has painting, tapestries, textiles, has all the crafts, art of all the various religions. Okay, now the University of London. Until the 1820s, we only in England had Oxford and Cambridge, because they had been given a monopoly many centuries earlier. And the British Empire was coming into being, and people in other countries wanted to be able to get a university qualification, and Oxford and Cambridge were not interested in external degrees. So the university was founded as an examining and degree-giving body. Now we're going to go over the park here. That's Metropolitan Policemen. They have not only a police station in the park, but stables in the park. In London, colleges were founded to prepare students for these exams. So the University of London is a federation of these colleges which are all over London, each one quite separate and independent, but federated together, and that is where the students study. You belong to a college and do all your studies there. Some teach all subjects, some only teach art, some teach arts and science, this one science and technology, so they vary. Left. And this lake is part of the landscaping. It's called the Serpentine, and as you see, you can hire boats, and you can go swimming over there, and those birds are the Canada geese, which some fool brought over half a dozen of in the last century. And we've got several thousand of them now. They've done very nicely. People love them, in fact, not farmers. The Hyde Park is about, all of it, the Hyde Park and Kensington Palace, is about 2 miles east-west and 1 mile north-south. Now, London. When we talk about London today, we've been this large area with a radius of 15 to 18 miles around Trafalgar Square. Outside that area is what is called the Green Belt, because in the early 50s, to stop big towns going on indefinitely, the government of the day created this area around the big towns where nobody can build. Well, that's a theory, but it doesn't stop the Ministry of Transport digging the whole place up. Of course, comfortably off middle-class people jumped the green belt and built beyond it. But the actual London, 15 to 18 miles around Trafalgar Square, it has a population of 8 million. Now, the first Londoners were traders. They became merchants, now they're bankers and brokers. But when England became one country in the 900s, and the kings established themselves in a palace on the Thames 2 miles to the west of London, and that 2 miles became built up, and the Westminster area was referred to as the West End of London. In the last 100 to 150 years, everything except money has moved westwards, so that the West End of London, capital W, capital E, is in fact now the centre of town. That's where you were this morning, the West End. Now, ahead of you is Oxford Street, where I understand you were this morning, and from the Marble Arch where we are to that tall building at the end called Centre Point, it's roughly 1.75 miles of department stores and other shops. This is Park Lane. To the right, inside the park, is what's called Speaker's Corner. and that is Sundays. People come there on a Sunday to talk about whatever they like, which is mostly religion and politics, provided they don't try to get a revolution going either here or anywhere else. We have turned into Mayfair. Now, you this morning walked through part of Mayfair. You walked in Bond Street, you walked in Burlington Arcade. Mayfair was built up in the 1700s for upper-class people, and it was lived in by such people in houses right through till the early 1950s. So they still live, little houses like that, still private houses, but mostly if they live here today, they live in flats. Mayfair is still very expensive. It still largely belongs to the Duke of Westminster, but it has become a commercial area. This is the United States Embassy here on the right, and the statue is of Eisenhower with his back to it because he didn't like it. It was brand new in his day and he thought it was awful. Now, this is Grosvenor Square. I know it's written Grosvenor, it's Grosvenor Square. Those are the office workers from round the square having their lunch break. Over here, the moment the sun comes out, everybody takes all their clothes off. They do not listen to any people telling them how unhealthy this is. They just take their clothes off. This is Berkeley Square, not Berkeley. That's Berkeley's in California. This is Berkeley, England. You see the little houses, the houses on the other side, yes, they were the little townhouse of people whose mansion was in the country. It was sort of pied-à-terre, you know, they came here for Christmas, shopping and Christmas preparations, and they came here for the season, when Parliament was sitting, or to do a bit of shopping before they went away for the summer. But most of the time the house was shut up. And they got their place in the country and their place in Scotland, and then they go to Riviera, and they'd go here and they'd go there. Now we're going to drive down where you've walked already, down Piccadilly. Now you came through Burlington Arcade this morning. Now next to Burlington Arcade is the Burlington House, home of Lord Burlington once, which is the Royal Academy, and those red-nosed Union flags are for the summer exhibition. Now this is the most extraordinary exhibition. I don't think any other country has anything quite like it. Everybody sends in their masterpieces. The only condition is it's never been put on display or bought or sold. So here's your Burlington Arcade this morning. You came down there, yes, and here next door is the Royal Academy. They've also got an exhibition of Hisab. Now Piccadilly Circus is celebrating the 100th anniversary of Eros. Eros, the god of love, right. The flags are to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Eros and also collect money for the Shaftesbury homes. They're doing that as well. So Piccadilly Circus here. To the left is Regent Street. That is Shaftesbury Avenue going through Soho. And that is 1890 Street through a 17th century area, a theatre street, and all little side streets out of there, full of restaurants of every nationality you can think of, particularly Chinese, Indian and Italian.
Chinatown.
If you go up that way to the right-hand side, there's a whole Chinese area, not just Chinese restaurants, but shops for the Chinese community. I mean, if what you want is a video in Cantonese with no subtitles, Soho's the place to get it. So it's all Soho, straight ahead and on the left. Leicester Square, straight ahead of you there with the tree. This is Burberry's on the left, the original Burberry's. And on the right on the corner, that's the theatre showing Phantom of the Opera. This is the centre of town, Trafalgar Square. Mileages from London are measured from here. London has a radius of 15 to 18 miles around here, and roads go from here in all directions. We are coming from the west for the shopping. That's the National Gallery. Now that building with all the columns on the left houses our major collection of paintings from the Primatist to the Post-Impressionist. At the back is the Portrait Gallery. Both galleries are open free of charge Monday to Saturday from 10 through till 6 and Sunday afternoons. The church is St Martin's in the Fields. Fields have long gone. Now here is Trafalgar Square, Nelson in the middle on his column. People come here to celebrate and demonstrate and hold meetings, but mostly to feed the pigeons. The area to the left is Covent Garden, and it goes from north from here up to Shaftesbury Avenue. And so they used to be in Covent Garden, the old market, wholesale for fruit, flowers and vegetables. That left in 1974, and people have opened shops and boutiques and cafes. They sell from stalls on the streets. A very lively area is, and this is where Andrew Lloyd Webber's new show is going to be on tonight. And look up here on the left, and you're looking at the market. Up there, that's where it is. Season. The road to the right goes over Waterloo Bridge and to an area called the South Bank Complex, which we'll be seeing later. And then on the left-hand side is an obviously, well, if you've got any of your own, it's an obviously late 19th century building. 1870 it was finished, and it is the Royal Courts of Justice, known as the Law Courts, and that is the major court for civil trials and the Court of Appeal. If you see people in black and white dressed around here, particularly if you happen to see a woman dressed in black and white, then they are barristers. Now, the statue on the right, which I have time to point out to you, was rather surprising. Dr. Johnson wrote the first English dictionary. And while we're going so slowly, do look at these splendid lampposts from the 19th century as well. They're absolutely gorgeous. They were made for gas lamps at the time. The city has burnt many times. The Second World War, colossal destruction by firebombs, absolute areas wiped out, but they were areas of office buildings. And they've been rebuilt by office buildings, and some of them have been rebuilt yet again. Now we're approaching the City of London. In the middle of the road is Temple Bar. Okay, so why is it a column? Well, it used to be a barrier. It was a barrier there, and any people coming to sell their goods on the London markets who weren't Londoners had to pay customs duty. The fire that altered the history of London was in the year 1666. Now, 1666, London was built of 2- and 3-story wooden buildings for the most part. By the way, this is the medieval city, is not yet the Roman city. In a moment the cathedral will come into sight, but I just want to say that this is Fleet Street, because it goes down to the River Fleet. You see the road goes down and up again, down to the Fleet and up Ludgate Hill. The Fleet was the natural boundary of the Roman city, which is ahead of us. Place. Now there ahead of us is St. Paul's Cathedral. And now as we reach St. Martin's Church, this is where the city walls went round, and this is now the Roman city of London on top of the hill. Christianity on that side goes back a very long way, because when the first St. Paul's was built there, finished in 604, it was on the site of a Christian church for the Roman period. So it's very, very old indeed, the practice of Christianity on the side. Now, why is St. Paul standing when everything around it was totally destroyed in the Second World War by these fires? Well, because St. Paul's watch up on the roof found the firebombs and put them out, found the little fires and put them out. St. Paul's watch up on the roof during the attacks saved St. Paul's from being destroyed, as everything around it was destroyed. Now, underneath is all that remains of all the previous Londons. Not much. Not much. Now, what with rebuilding and rebuilding and rebuilding, what with digging sewers, underground railways, what else? Telephone tunnels, water, etc., there is not much left. Nowadays, when a new building goes up, it destroys all the archaeological levels below, plus the geological level. This is clay. You've got to go deep in order to go up. And so nowadays they have to allow time for archaeologists or geologists to find out something. So there it is on the right. A temple to Mithras should be deep underground, instead of which it's sitting there outside. Now we're coming to the centre of the City of London, which is very appropriately called Bank. Straight ahead of us, the building with the columns, is the Royal Exchange. Now, the first stock exchange was founded in the 1500s. Queen Elizabeth came to visit, decreed it should be called the Royal Exchange. It burnt down in 1666, so they rebuilt it. So it burned down again in 1830. So that's the 1830s rebuilding. By the 1930s, it was too small. They didn't pull it down and rebuild it. As you see, they built a new one. And they rebuilt the new one in the 1960s. So today's stock exchange is a good old 60s hunk of concrete. Right, coming up on the right, built of stainless steel, with all its pipes outside, and known affectionately, or rather unaffectionately, here in the City of London as the oil refinery. Here on the right is Lloyd's of London. Lloyd's of London, known as the oil refinery. Now we're heading for the Thames. The tide is going out. It's a tidal estuary of the Thames, 95 miles long, and the high tides vary between 5 meters and 7.5 meters. It's the cleanest tidal estuary in the world, which has cost a fortune because it used to be filthy, it used to be a sewer. But there are more than 100 species of fish in it. It's a muddy river because all the land on both sides of the river was marshland before it was developed. Now, London Bridge and Tower Bridge, we've always had a London Bridge. London exists because London Bridge existed. The Romans were bringing a road diagonally across the country from Dover. When they hit the Thames, you've got this marshland on both sides, the Thames doing that, and they followed a hard on the north side until there was a hard on both sides and it was narrow enough and they built a bridge, and London was founded on the northern bridgehead, so that's how it came into existence. But that's not the bridge in all the adverts. The bridge in all the adverts is Tower Bridge, very showy, very photogenic, opens, let the big ships through, as old. And it's called Tower Bridge because it's by the Tower of London, not because of the great towers that somebody put on. Because coming up on the left is Her Majesty's Palace and Fortress of the Tower of London. It's a medieval castle, and for 500 years, between the 10 and 1500s, it was the principal fortified palace of the kings and queens. They went there whenever there was danger, which is quite often, but it wasn't from a foreign enemy, because the last successful foreign enemy was William the Conqueror who built the thing. It was the family and the great lords. But the last king to live there was Henry VIII. His children all spent the night before their coronation there, went in procession, but nobody lived there after the 1500s.
The Tower of London makes for a very convenient rest stop on our city tour, and it's also a very exciting place to visit. Tower Bridge here in the distance, you can see the drawbridge is up. The Tower of London is one of the top attractions in all of England.
Look at that.
The admission charge is reasonable. It's about $10 to get in. And this entitles you to admission to the Crown Jewels, of course, one of the most famous attractions inside. And even more interesting, you can listen to the stories of the yeoman warders, the guards called the Beefeaters, who patrol the grounds inside, and they are hilarious. Well, now it's time to reboard the bus and continue our city tour of London.
You have the bus, but you have the pleasure boats. From here you can get that much. Across the river is Shell, the oil company, and the other building is going to become a hotel if we needed another one. It was County Hall. We have traffic. You can not only go down the river, but upriver to Kew Gardens, Hampton Court, Richmond, and so on. Now we're going to circle all the way around the House of Parliament. Not quite all the way around, because what we can't do is come back over Westminster Bridge, so we have to go twice over the same bridge, but I suppose that will worry you all nose. This on the left is the Air Ministry. We're coming in sight, gradually, of Westminster Abbey. So this is Parliament on the left, this is Parliament. This is on the left where the members go in. Members of Parliament go in here. The Great Hall survived from the year 1100. This is the Great Hall here. This is the public entrance to Parliament. Not bad turnout at all. House of Lords on the left. Increased pensions, not VAT. Richard the Lionheart on his horse. The Queen's grandfather, George V, there. Well, never mind, we're going over the river. And we're going to come back on a different bridge. Otherwise, we'd be here, on the right. Just pull up on the other side, that's our intention. See that coach there? I'm just going to stop there for you to take your pictures. Just for a moment. Just to get off, take picture, get back.
This is one of the most characteristic views of England. The Houses of Parliament and Big Ben in the distance, right here in the River Thames. So this makes a perfect picture opportunity for us to click a few frames before we hop back on the bus to resume the city tour.
And this is Waterloo Bridge, which we can't stop on, but it does give you some lovely views as we go over it. One of the best views, I think, panoramically, is from this bridge. To the right round to St Paul's in the city, to the left, right round to the west end of Parliament. Now we're going back down the Strand. Now we turn into Strand. Now when we came up the Strand, I was telling you about Covent Garden on the right. This is where you have your photograph taken covered in pigeons. Buy your bird seed here. We were the first people there one November Sunday. My God, talk about the birds, you know, Daphne du Maurier's story. Wow, she was frightened, because these birds were ravenous. Right, now we go under the Admiralty Arch and up the Mall. And when we get under the arch, you'll see that the pavement changes colour, and we drive up a red carpet. The architect was Basil Spence. He's the same man who built Coventry Cathedral. Needless to say, when that thing went up, people didn't like it. Now we're on the south side here of the park, and we're coming up. We're going to pass two things. We're going to pass the Royal Geographic Society. And there are two statues outside of rather differently dressed men. One was Shackleton, who went to the icier regions of the globe, and the other was David Livingstone, who went to the hotter regions of the globe. After that comes the Royal Albert Hall, which is our largest concert hall, 19th century, and it's used for massed orchestras, massed bands, massed audiences, and the promenade concerts every summer. Now we're going to turn left, straight ahead to Kensington High Street, but down the left becomes Gloucester Road. You're nearly there.